I'm really looking forward to the launch of Season 12 on Wednesday, the 20th of March. This is shaping up to be another fantastic season as we continue to bring to you a world-class lineup of guests who all speak to one or more of the 10 timeless principles of scaling from our Scale X 10 principle framework. In the meantime, I wanted to share with you something a little different. As we're now approaching Season 12, more than 110 guest interviews and almost 3 years on from our launch back in May 2021, I often get asked by listeners about my own story. Recently, I was interviewed by the wonderful host of Best of Belfast, Matthew Thompson. It was a highly enjoyable conversation for me as Matt delved into some of my personal history and the motivations behind simple scaling and indeed Scale X Insider. I hope you enjoy listening as much as I enjoyed the conversation with Matt. I look forward to connecting with you all again in Season 12. And in the meantime, take care.
Brendan, man, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Matt, it's an absolute pleasure. We've had good fun off air, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, we should record the last 20 minutes. It's like there's fire in the booth already. So, it's going to be a good one. Take us to picking apples. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm from the Orchard County. Wasn't initially grown up in the orchard land, but I grew up in Portadown on the outskirts of, it's in Armagh, but I grew up in the outskirts of Portadown, a place called the Tandragee Road. And my mum was from the country, dad was from Portadown, all his father, his grandfather, all the lineage from Portadown. They were painters. And mum had always a desire to get us back into the country, especially in the height of the Troubles. So moved to the country when I was 12, back to where my mum lived. She's from apple farming stock. And so I spent my summers in the orchards pulling what's called water shots. They're shoots that grow off the apple trees that take the goodness out of the apples. So you literally have to take these things off by hand. So we had great fun as kids. Literally, the tractor trailer went around the village during the summer days. We would jump on the back, head off into the orchards. You wouldn't do it now.
It's like a movie.
I know. I'm just thinking of my own kid now. He's 15. I was like on the back of a trailer, and there's no security in that. It was literally that. It was that. You got £5 a day, 25 quid at the end of the week, and at the end of the week, we took the bus into Portadown and spent it. So
love it.
Yeah, that was how my summers were spent. You were always working, and then I graduated. After graduated from the orchards into a clothes shop, Gino's in Portadown. Worked in there, quit there actually one lunchtime. That's an interesting story in itself. Went round across the road to a pub called Bennett's and asked them for a job. I got the job and I was there for another, 4 or 5 years, put myself through university.
Wow. So what got you out of retail? Why was the pub more attractive?
I'll never forget the pub was just available. So it was around the corner. So the boss man at that stage of Gino's, I remember one day he was an interesting guy. His origins were in Pakistan, and he'd asked me to go around to his brother-in-law who run a kebab shop to get him a Coke. And I said, no problem. Went round to Sabash, came back with a Coke, and it was a Coke and just a carton. They had poured the Coke from the little machines, and I handed it to the boss at that stage. He says, what is this? I says, it's a Coke. He says, no, I want Coke in a can. I said, but that's a Coke. And he says, no, I want Coke in a can. Go and get me a Coke in a can. I said, I tell you what, this isn't working for us. Yeah. I'd been working there for a number of years, and I left, went round. The actual job market, there was a step in between from moving there to Bennett's. There was a job market next door. Looked in the window. Bennett's were looking staff. Walked across to Bennett's and said, believe you're looking staff. And said, yeah, can you start at lunchtime? And I said, yeah. So actually I was serving staff from Gino's at lunchtime. Having worked there an hour before. So yeah.
Class.
That was
Okay, so what is it about your upbringing or who you are as a person that gives you that sense of, I'm going to say, like, dignity, self-respect, that Coke example was just like, actually, I refuse. One of my favorite quotes an old manager always used to said to me was, "You deserve whatever you tolerate."
Yeah, it's such a great line.
Where does that come from in you?
My dad's a great person. He's 85, really lucky to have him. And just a great man, a man who is very well respected, has always been very well respected. And he instilled in us that value of having respect for yourself. Now, I'm very respectful of those and especially at that stage, those in senior positions.
Absolutely.
Hugely respectful, and would admire anyone who is entrepreneurial and who has set off and ventured on their own. So I had admiration for this person who had started their own venture, not coming from this country, and set up a very successful business and put it down. But there's something innate in me at that point in time. It was interesting actually when I reflect back and go, God, yeah, I did that. It just felt unreasonable.
Yeah.
It felt unreasonable, and it was just someone, when I reflect on that question now, someone who was taking advantage of their power at that point in time, someone who was taking advantage of a young kid who was 16, and it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something that I deeply reflected on overnight and came back the
Yeah,
next day
yeah,
and
yeah,
said,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the way you spoke to me
But it
yesterday.
was a
I'm
gut
not sure-
thing, and
it
that's
was a
why it's
gut-
interesting to me.
Yeah. So I suspect it has come from dad again, you know, mum, hardworking.
Yeah.
But my dad, there were certain things that he wouldn't tolerate. And he worked incredibly hard, but commanded a level of respect for that.
Yeah. Very interesting. It's funny, you know, as you go through life, you kind of see the world with different glasses. So we were talking in the coffee shop there, you know, very new into the fatherhood journey. And so I kind of have these fatherhood glasses on, very new into the leadership journey where the team's slowly growing. So, you know, another pair of glasses that I'm kind of on. I'm just thinking about that scenario. I'm like, you know, if Ross had done that, like, and let's say I really wanted Coke in a can.
Yeah.
You probably would have just went, "Oh, Roscoe, thank you so much, buddy. See you next time. Could you get a can?" Instead of being like, "You need to go back there right now. You need to get that can. You need to make sure the perspiration is just dripping off it like an advert." You know, it's interesting.
Yeah, that didn't make sense to me at all. And it's interesting you mention becoming a parent for the first, or for the second time actually. Congratulations
Thank you.
to
Thank you very much.
girls. So I'm kind of my eldest is coming 20. Cara's 17, Owen's 15.
On the parenting journey, I'm like early Monday morning and you're like Thursday afternoon.
Well, I love that because, and I'm starting to see that now. You go through different chapters of your life. Myself, my wife, Colleen, we can head out now and not be overly concerned as to kind of what we've left behind. So they're all very, you know, independent at this stage, but having scaled businesses and also being a parent, most of my life lessons are learned through parenting. Parenting is just incredibly challenging.
Yeah.
Kids hold a mirror up to you and showcase to you all your vulnerabilities, all your frailties, all the ugliness, and that mirror is there constantly. And our innate desire is to want them to change. But until you understand that actually it's important for you to change, then your life as a parent becomes incredibly difficult. It only changes when you recognize that actually if you truly listen to your kids at all stages, you become a better person.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go here. You're an entrepreneur. You're in the marketplace. You're in the arena. You're getting your hands dirty. You're making mistakes. You're having successes, triumphs, lows, all the rest of it. You become a dad. Talk to me about that shift. Not from the parenting perspective, because a lot of us have heard that before. How did you change as an entrepreneur when you became a parent? What sort of perspective changes or skills? Like, dig into that a wee bit more for me, because I'm selfishly very interested.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I had my first kids, what's considered now to be relatively young. So Anya was born whenever I was 28, so still was clueless, really. clueless about life, clueless about business.
I'm
Clueless about
28, so
people.
Roscoe, you listen to this, okay? I'm human. I'm a mere mortal.
Yeah. So for years, you want your kids to conform to the life that you have already been living.
Ouch.
And until you recognize that your life will not be the same again and lean into that new life, then things become incredibly challenging. So I was still at the stage where I'm trying to scale a business and do all of those things, have a life beyond business with my friends, while still be a parent. And the expectation would have rested heavily on Colin in terms of the bias of the parenting. What really transformed, I suppose, began my own journey of, I would say, personal transformation, which is a daily, it's a daily journey. Anya was diagnosed with high functioning autism in her early teens, masked it for years, and she inspires me every day. She's just an incredible girl, and I thought for years she had to change when the reality was I had to change.
Interesting.
And that began a journey of self-reflection, of how can I change that will ultimately change the environment that Anya's living in, that will change the environment for us as a family, and actually support Anya in the challenge that she was encountering as a young teen. And that journey continues to this day. And when you bring that into leadership, we very much coach now around lead self first before you lead others, before you lead an organization. As leaders, we tend to be very quick to point the finger at everyone else and what everyone else must do in order to change, to conform to what we're trying to achieve from a vision perspective. But actually, the organization and the people that exist in that organization are only ever an expression of you.
Like the mirror you talked about with your kids?
Absolutely.
Wow. Crazy. You actually said a quote before we started recording that your mom always said, where show me your company and I'll tell you who you are. Yeah. And my brain actually misinterpreted that. My brain, I thought that you kind of said, show me the business that you lead and I'll tell you who you are. But it's actually true.
It is.
You know?
Absolutely, because ultimately you will attract into the business the type of person that you are.
Oof.
So if you're someone who cultivates healthy growth, cultivates learning, cultivates healthy challenge, but cares deeply, those are the sorts of people that you'll attract.
Wow.
And in many respects, it's similar in parenting.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever feel bulletproof in your life?
Yes.
I gave you a wee bit of context. When you were talking about the shift that happened whenever Anya was diagnosed, I had this picture in my head of like, almost like a bravado melting away. It could be totally off.
I think it's a wonderful insight. Yep, and I'll give you a sense of that. At that stage, I'm leading a very successful business. I have an amazing team around me. Things are going well financially. I'm experiencing all that the world has to give. At that stage, I think I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo.
Good
going for my third degree. So physically I'm feeling brilliant.
You're competent in every area of your life.
I am bulletproof.
You've achieved mastery in all the core areas of masculinity.
Yes, and then Anya says, "No, you're not.
Wow,
you're a shithead." So I for years tried to demonstrate my rightness of her wrongness, and then realized, no, you're actually right.
Wow.
So yeah, so I would say very much in my 20s into my 30s, but that quickly faded away as the kids got older, and we recognized actually we need to make changes here. Personally.
Yeah. Mad.
Yeah.
Any business experience as a kid other than the apples, anyone in your family in business? Was this a natural progression for you? Was it totally left field? Give me a wee bit of that.
Yeah, I'm 48 now, so grew up in Portadown initially, then small village, Ballyhagan. So, entrepreneurialism wasn't a thing then. It's very cool now. Lots of people are entrepreneurs. You grew up in a very different era. So, Catholic growing up in Portadown, neither mum nor dad were educated. Dad had to leave school at 16 because his father had passed away dad was the eldest in his house, so he had to go and get a job.
What was dad doing most of your life?
Dad, he went into car company, actually, Prentice the motor people, who became actually the largest Mercedes franchise throughout Ireland.
Cool.
And my dad was part of that growth. So he graduated from being a kind of an office boy to actually heading up the finance function.
Amazing.
But never ever qualified. So the emphasis was very much, as we were growing up, on education. Get educated. I'm the middle of five, and people often say, "Yeah, equally balanced. You have a chip on both shoulders." But we're all educated. We've all got a profession. I qualified as a chartered accountant because my dad used to say,
"Good for you."
So that was all part of the kind of the programming growing up. Dad wasn't a chartered accountant. He clearly had a dream to be one, but never actually made the leap to become qualified. But I remember when he would bring home, we'd clear the kitchen table at the end of tea, and Dad would bring home these big green ledgers, and everything was done manually. And he would ask me to help him, tot up do the double entry and plug the numbers into the calculator. And I loved this.
Class.
And I said, "Someday, son, you'll be a chartered accountant." He goes, yeah, whatever, Dad. Call me out more numbers there. I had no idea what it was, but I eventually qualified as a chartered accountant. So that was I loved business. I worked in lots of businesses as a kid, but there were very few entrepreneurs. The one person driving the Jag in Portadown was the one entrepreneur that everybody knew, and it was the same, in Ballyhagan, where now every second person has, is a solopreneur or is running a small business. And I just love, it's why what I do now is working with leaders of SMEs every day. I love the raw authenticity that SME leaders bring, and that get up and go, that can do that they have. So I was inspired by that. So for me, the chartered accountancy qualification was a passport into business.
Yeah.
As soon as I qualified, joined Cooper's Lebron, and I went straight into a software company. You guys are far too young to remember, but there was a technology boom and bust back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I was heading up the finance function for a local company, and we had scaled at that stage. I worked with some amazing people within that business, the CFO, the chairman, just some incredible people. And again, that gave me that real thirst and drive to continue to develop my forte and skill set within business. So the chartered accountancy qualification, as much as I berated it at the time, it was just a wonderful passport into business. Yeah, you get an insight once you're privy to the numbers, you get an insight into business that very few ever get. And if you're curious, you will start to ask questions off the back of those numbers that take you into different parts of business that others don't necessarily normally see.
Yeah, I mean, what's standing out to me is that curiosity. And that curiosity leads to story. A lot of people on the outside, they look at something like finance and accountancy and it seems very black and white. And well, it is black and white, but it seems very dry and drab. But I have a mate of mine, and he used to work for one of the big four and like forensic accountancy and all sorts of mad stuff. And he would just be electrified by it and just like getting all caught up in the story of it. And when you're sitting at the kitchen table with the green ledgers and you're just like, "Dad, give me another number," there's almost like you're getting like a huge dopamine hit from like the process. Yeah. There's like a gamification to it. And a lot of the people that I've sat down with who are very successful, and not only that, really enjoy what they do. There's that kind of love of the game element to it, where it's like, yes, of course, there's financial reward, and there's this reward, and there's that reward, but there's almost a sense of like, "Oh, this is great! Can't wait to do the next thing!" And like, look at this, look what's happening over here. And I think I can see how that even has kind of spilled over into what you do with SMEs, like you were saying, with simple scale and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I would completely agree. the numbers are the scorecard, and I love taking score. But what I'm really addicted to is growth. I love personal growth. I love business growth. I just addicted to people who are inspired and motivated to move beyond their own fears, their own doubts, to actually break new ground and to grow. And I love that. I love being around people like that, and I'm inspired by that. What I've come to realize, it wasn't really. I love the numbers because of the scorekeeping, but it wasn't. That was just the output of the inputs, and what I was really addicted to was the inputs. Yeah, the people that drive the growth, the processes, the dynamic of teams, the breaking into new markets. Like, that's just, as I say that, it puts the chills up the back of my neck. I just love being around people who are inspired to do new things.
Yep. So you've written this great book. Thank you so much for giving it. Roscoe and I will both read it. Simple Scaling, 10 Proven Principles to 10x Your Business. And I would like to dive into this word simple.
Yeah.
Because when I think about scaling a business, I run a business that it's the opposite of scaled, right? And so when I think about scaling my business, you said there was goosebumps running up your spine. There's like palpitations that appear on my temple. I just think stress. I think chaos. I think the opposite of simple. So before we go any further and get into simple scaling, talk to me about the word simple and why it's different to the word easy.
Yeah, I get challenged with this a lot. Scaling isn't simple, but for many, they're confused with what the word simple actually means. And simple simply means uncomplicated. It doesn't infer easy. Scaling requires effort. Anything that you do to break new ground requires effort. And let me just give that some context and why the word simple is so important. There are 5.7 million small and medium-sized enterprises in the UK. They contribute £2 trillion worth of revenue to the UK economy. Less than 34,000 of those 5.7 million SMEs are actually achieving scaling. And that 34,000 contributes half the £2 trillion worth of revenue.
Okay, so just help me. I'm not exactly a numbers guy. You said 5.7 million.
Yep.
And only 34,000 contribute half.
0.6% contribute half.
Wow. It's Pareto's principle on roids.
Absolutely. And this is what gets my juices flowing in terms of if we can turn the dial and turn that 0.6% into 0.6, 0.6, not 1% you're going to make a significant difference. In fact, the latest research suggests that if we could increase the number of scale-ups by 1%, we have the potential to increase GDP by a cumulative 225 billion by 2034 and create 150,000 net new jobs.
And just to park for just a second, I just want to jump something in here because I wanted to say it, and I'll just say it now. One of the reasons why I respect your work so much and I'm inspired by your work so much, our heart, we love Northern Ireland. We want to see Northern Ireland thrive on a global scale. But the trickle down of all that, so I know some of the businesses you work with. I know the impact it has had. I know how they're able to hire 10, 20, 30, 100, 200, 300 more employees, 300 more mortgages, 300 more families. What scaling could do for this little tiny country is phenomenal.
Matt, this is
phenomenal.
Yeah. This is what drives me every day. Our purpose is to inspire, connect, and enable ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose. So this is about healthy scaling. This is about purposeful scaling. This is about conscious leadership. And I always use the metaphor of dropping a pebble into the pond. Whenever a leader wakens up to conscious scaling, they not only positively impact their nearest and dearest, their partner, their families, but importantly, their teams, their organization, the communities that organization resides in. society and economies as a whole. And what we're trying to do here is actually create lots of these little ripples that ultimately join together to create this wonderful large ripple that impacts every corner of Northern Ireland, because I just love Northern Ireland. The more I travel, the more, and I've traveled 6 continents at this stage. I don't know how many countries I've been. And I think it's maybe a factor of age as well. The more I've come to love the country that we live in.
Yeah.
And the people here, we don't, I suppose as part of the social paradigm, we're very modest.
Mm-hmm.
Wind your neck in
Yeah.
is what we grew up with. Who do you think you are?
Mm-hmm.
You don't get that in the States. Just wind your neck out. Tell them who you are.
Turn into a giraffe.
Yeah.
Don't just poke your head above the parapet.
That's it. And back to the word simple, there is so much noise out there at the moment about scaling.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we write the book? When I came to the CEO position of CDE, I was invited to be the MD of that business, and I was very proud. Incredible business, an incredible experience for 17 years, 13 years as CEO. It offered me so many different opportunities, but I had no guidebook. In fact, scaling wasn't even a thing then.
Mm.
Scaling wasn't in our business lexicon. Now, what I knew is that I wanted to grow the business, and I wanted to grow the business successfully.
Mm-hmm.
But as a CEO, a newbie CEO, I had no guidebook. There was you had to figure this out. So it's like somebody who wants to ride in a Tour de France team, but they're being asked to build their own bike first. And they've got to go and procure the parts. You know, so what we wanted to do, this is the book that I wish I'd had back in 2007 when I started this journey.
Yeah.
It's a guide, it's a roadmap to scaling, stripping out all of the noise. Mm-hmm. And it's not simply me saying, well, this is my version of the truth and this is the truth that everyone should adhere to. Mm-hmm. I interviewed scores of people across the globe who had successfully scaled. You know, leaders in Gymshark, Skyscanner. These are great businesses. Locally, Brendan Mooney from Kainos, an incredible scaling entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Who has scaled that business from a small spin out from Queen's University to a company that's now employing thousands of people and revered on the UK stock market. So the book defines those 10 principles. Strip out all the noise. These are the fundamental truths if you wish to scale a business.
Wow.
And I'm inspired to support SME leaders to help them to scale their businesses. Mm-hmm. And I assert that if you've 10 people and you're delivering at least £1 million worth of revenue or value to people, then there's no reason why that 1 million can't be 10 million. Mm-hmm. There's no reason why that 10 million can't be 100 million.
Yeah.
The limit that we put on ourselves is self-imposed.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. And you know, that picture of dropping the pebble into the water and the ripples of that.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the people who listen to this show, they're people who want to make big ripples.
Brilliant.
Whether that's in their personal lives or their professional lives. You know, this building here, Omo Bass, it's surrounded by ripple makers.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, there's a new concept for us to work on together.
Let's
ripple
make
makers.
more. We need to be careful with that. Let's make more ripple makers.
You know, and so you know, I see Ormo Baths as a business as a huge ripple maker. You know, our mutual friend Ryan Tierney up in Limavady, Seaton Matters. You know, I love Seaton Matters because I didn't know they existed 6 months ago, and it's just telltale Northern Ireland, like you were saying. These, you know, underdogs that kind of fly below the radar. What's that up in Limavady? What do they make? Like medical chairs.
Yeah.
And just like massive, not ripples, but waves that kind of spreads out of the epicenter of Limavady all around the world now, you know. And those are we all have that desire, particularly people who listen to this show and in this sort of community. We want to, like your father, make sure that the people coming after us go a little bit further, you know. So he didn't become a chartered accountant, but you did. And I see that same thing in you because you became a newbie CEO and you didn't have a guidebook. So you wrote the guidebook so the next newbie CEO can kind of ride that wave, if that makes sense. So it's cool.
I love that insight. And, you know, the Tierney guys come on to our program last year, ScaleX Accelerator program. We turned the the book into a 1-year program to really handhold and step leaders of SMEs through the scaling process. And the 3 guys come onto the program, and they're doing wonderful things. Now, I mean, for anyone who hasn't heard of Seeding Matters, I encourage them to look them up. I took the guys and a delegation, I think there was 17 of us, went to Japan back in February to witness what Toyota was doing on lean manufacturing. Ryan Tierney's passion is all things lean, and he's a protege of Paul Akers, who's a lean guru, a 2-second lean guru, or he's coined the phrase 2-second lean. But what people won't know is that actually, and it's a plug for Ryan's summit coming up in September, he is bringing people from across the world to Limavady to witness how Ryan has implemented lean within his factory. You know, and you've been up to the factory. It's not easy got to, you know.
We joke all the time. You're driving up there and you're like, is Google Maps got it right? The roads are getting smaller and narrower. It's like I must have put the wrong address in.
But they're global exemplars of lean. And what we want to do in terms of creating our community of scalers is to champion and cheerlead one another. Because there's another part to this. Scaling a business, being a leader of a high growth business, it's a lonely place. The leader lives in his head for a lot of time. I know I certainly did. You have a requirement to bring high energy to your team, but you're masking a lot of the time the challenges that scaling actually brings. I never had a peer group. So you're kind of wrestling with a lot of this stuff on your own. We have now 50 leaders who have gone through the program over the last number of years, 35 companies. And if you see on social media now, they're championing and cheerleading one another.
Wow.
We have different channels by which they reach out to one another. We have monthly meetups, quarterly events. They're getting the support from one another. I was speaking to one of our participants this morning. I had breakfast with him before he came in, and I've just learned that he's doing a collaboration with another one of the companies that I knew nothing about. And I just love that.
Awesome. That's
So,
the power of the cohort as well.
Absolutely. And they're the same mentality. These are radiators. I talk about radiators and drains. These are life's radiators that bring wonderful energy.
Much better than ripple makers.
Well, ripple makers are radiators. Radiator ripple makers.
Okay, meat and potatoes time then, okay? This is where, if we were a B2B business podcast, this would have been the first question that we start off with. So, Brendan McGurgan from Simple Scaling, what is it that holds businesses back from scaling?
Yeah.
Give us a wee bit of that.
Yeah, it's you.
Game over.
The very person that creates the fire to begin with becomes the arsonist. The person who has been the originator of this wonderful business, who has imparted to grow, eventually impedes it.
Wow.
The bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. So the business will only scale to a factor of how the leader has scaled themselves. And that's why we always say scaling starts from the inside out. Now, that's very challenging for a leader to actually comprehend. So we've got to take them through a journey where we strip them down and we build them back up. And they go on this, they come in believing that they're going to kind of fix all the bits in the organization that they're pointing the finger at that need fixed. But actually, we seek to fix them through the journey in terms of the unveiling their power as a leader. And many of the limitations, I'll put it this way, 80% of scaling a business is mindset. It's the mindset of the leader. 20% is the tactics. The first principle in the ScaleX 10 principle framework is psyche. It's mindset.
Wow.
And it is an impact multiplier for all of the other principles. But it also acts as an impediment to the principles.
And this is where I think Northern Ireland comes into this as well, because I would say our cultural psyche is quite limited. We could spend hours talking about why that is, but I think you mentioned Americans earlier. You know, I was chatting to a guy yesterday who we interviewed, a guy called Joe Kennedy, and he was saying that, you know, if there was one thing he could inject into the Northern Irish psyche, would be this phrase, "We'll figure it out." You know, just this can-do sort of attitude, this confidence that America seems to have that for whatever reason we don't. And we like the underdog story. We like the humility that a lot of people from here have, but there's a shadow side to that as well, and it's definitely a limitation of mindset. Like you said.
Completely agree, and throughout our program, we coach people through that self-examination of their own paradigm, their own limiting beliefs. I love the Aristotle quote, you know, give me the boy until he's 7 and I'd show you the man. You know, the science now shows. It's
funny, you're the second person this week to say that. We had a guest in literally a few days ago who said the exact same thing.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful. And coming back to parenting, everything you say, so take for an example, my own upbringing, quite academic, would often come home with an A, and my mum would say, sure, I wouldn't expect anything else. No, she was saying that with love and with care. But actually what it meant is, don't try and do something where you won't get an A.
Yeah.
So as parents, certainly we've been more mindful, and we've 3 very academic kids, certainly 2 of them. One wants to play football for a living. He has no interest in school whatsoever. We'd be very careful to praise the effort and not the output.
That's good. Really good.
So an understanding of the language of leadership is so critically important, and the language that you're actually speaking to yourself. So I'm a huge believer in what follows I am follows you. So a lot of the leaders that come into our program, they say, I am not good enough to be here. I am not entrepreneurial. In fact, we've had a number of participants who have dyslexia who said, I can't be in that room. And the challenge is actually getting them into the room in the first place, because they have told themselves that they're not good enough. Their belief is such that they're not good enough. And once they get over that self-limiting belief, their entire lives change.
Really interesting.
And that self-examination of the things that we say, like we banned the phrase "not too bad" in our last company because it's a double negative. You know, how you doing? Well, I'm bad, but today I'm not too bad.
Crazy.
So, you know, it was either good or great. We don't say not too bad, but it's a societal paradigm here.
Yeah.
The not too bad. They, you know, almost afraid to say that things are good. You know, things are really good. You know, you opened up this session before we switched on the mics with gratitude. It's something we do every time we have a mastermind or an in-person workshop. We start off with the gratitudes. There's so much to be grateful for. We are living in the best time there has ever been to actually scale a business. But there's so much negativity out there if you want to find it, if you want to go looking for it.
Yeah.
That's why, in terms of cultivating my own mindset, I don't listen to the news.
Yeah, man.
What news I need to hear will find me.
Bro, I'm the exact same. I'm just like, if anyone, like, if there's an event that's so important, my granny will tell me.
Yeah. Exactly the same. And it's why I love podcasts. It's why when you extended the invitation to come on, I was delighted. I love podcasts. I listen to podcasts all of the time. The value that you get. And you can decide what you're going to listen to.
Yeah.
So there's any number of scaling podcasts. I host my own now. And you know, people who are willing to give up their time and give value for free that you can access to. Now, what's better, listening to an hour's podcast that's going to support you in scaling your business, or watching the news for an hour? What's going to cultivate a mindset which is going to inspire you to want to scale?
It's almost as if your mom was right when she said, show me your company and I'll show you who you are. You know, show me your audio company. You know, who you who you hanging out with digitally, and it shapes you in a profound way. Something came in my mind there. Angela Duckworth, I
Yeah.
think her name is.
Grit.
Grit, yeah, the Grit woman. And I remember listening to an interview with her, and she was talking about the importance of like focusing what you choose to focus your mind on. And she gave this lovely, lovely picture. And hopefully you've experienced it, and hopefully you listening have experienced it as well, where picture you're kind of like in a garden shed, like a wee wooden shed. You know, sometimes in the wood there's like those wee random holes where part of the wood's been knocked out, and you imagine that there's sunlight coming through the hole, and there's just that single beam of light, you know, really just like a laser almost, and it's beautiful and it's yellow. And she said, this is your brain. Your brain can only focus on one little tiny, tiny, tiny slither. And she says, we would be wise to focus on the slithers of light rather than all the darkness that surrounds it. And that's always stood out to me, because where we hone our attention onto literally changes your life. And there's a lot of different things out there that you can choose to hone your attention on.
Completely agree. You know, to add to that, what I say is what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on the negativity, you will find it everywhere. You'll find it everywhere. And I have such a radar up now for negative news and negative people. I was boarding the train this morning, and one of the conductors came round as we were waiting for the train going, oh, God, bloody horrible, isn't it? The bloody rain, this country. Why would anybody come to this bloody country? And I said, for the people. We're great. I kind of, we are, aren't we? You know, we're not bad crack, you know. And so as a leader, it's incumbent on us to check in on our language. And the focus, I always say your vision informs your decision. So the reason I'm here today is to support the podcasting community, and also support those business leaders who have reflected on scaling, maybe thought it wasn't for them, maybe think it's too tough. And hopefully, by virtue of this investment in time, we'll encourage one more company to actually scale by virtue of listening to this. Yeah. And if that's the case, then this investment in time has been very well worth it. But my vision drives every decision that I make. It informs the choices that I make on a daily basis. Yeah. And again, from a scaling perspective, less than 1% of leaders actually have a vision for the future. They haven't crafted and pixelated where they want to go. So the decisions they make today are being informed by the past as opposed to being directed by the future that they want to create for themselves, which is why often people arrive, 5 years down the line, and at 48 decades pass very, very quickly. A lot of people waking up and go, how did I get here? This isn't the life that I want to live. But actually they never took the time to reflect on what great looks like in 5 years' time. So what does great look like from a professional perspective? What does great look like from a personal perspective, in terms of relationships, in terms of my health, in terms of my emotional state, in terms of my fulfilling my purpose? What does great look like? Answer that question, because that will inform the choices that you make today, now. Does the choice that I make actually align? Is it congruent with that vision that I have for the future? And that's the slide rule I apply over everything.
Crazy. So I really like the belief that you have, where I'm going to read it. Personal belief that if you have a wonderful product or service, then you have an obligation to bring it to the world. Yeah. And I love that idea of actually, marketing as a mode of service. And if you have something good to offer the world, you should be shouting about it. So let's just spend a couple of minutes doing that. For the business leader that is listening to this, what sort of person are you looking for? A better way to phrase that would be, what sort of leader, what are the criteria for them to become a scaling entrepreneur? And where would you channel their energy as a first step? And talk about your own stuff, because your own stuff's brilliant.
Yeah, someone who is humble, who has a desire to learn, who is curious, who has a burning ambition to bring their wonderful product or service to the world. And again, I'll come back to it. If you are already exchanging services or products for £1 million, then there's absolutely no reason why you can't take that to 10 million. You can't 10x that. And if you're at 10, there's no reason why you can't 10x that. It's only, if you really examine it, you will understand that you are the limiting factor in this. And we want to bring people onto the program who have a desire to change, to grow, to bring value to the world. Because ultimately, 90% of businesses by volume, more than 90% of businesses by volume are SMEs. More than 70% of the workforce work in SMEs. So back to the ripples. SMEs are touching every corner of society. So depending on the consciousness, the energy, the ambition of the leader, that's going to have an impact on the people that are working for those businesses. And in turn, the families of the people within those businesses. Somebody who has had a shit day because the leader's in a mood.
Yeah.
Goes back home and brings that energy to their family.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a leader who has a desire to scale, desire to lean into a vision, understanding that you know what, this scares the absolute pants off me, but I'm going to lean into this anyway.
Yeah.
Because they're beyond their ego in terms of the fear of judgment. Why do people not scale? It's, the latest research suggests this lack of ambition. And really what that means is I'm comfortable where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I fear the judgment. Should I put my head above the parapet? In a Northern Irish context, people go, who does he think he is? He's getting beyond his station. All of these colloquial phrases. Too big for your boots. You'll create a fire big enough, you'll roast yourself. All of these things that form part of our societal paradigm, the language that is part of our programming. Back to the question, who do we want onto the program? People who want to create a vision that will outlast themselves. People who understand that they have a great product and service and want to serve others by virtue of leaning into a vision, to bring those, to give others across the world access to those wonderful products and services. And understanding that it's going to be challenging, but there's a risk in everything. There's a risk, a bigger risk, I would assert, staying the same than there is actually creating a vision for the future and leaning into that.
It's really interesting. I was actually going to bring this up earlier. You ever heard that domino theory thing? I don't know what the fancy physics term is, like the geothermic energy transfer domino thing. And it's this idea of if you take a domino, right? And if you flick the domino over, a domino can actually knock over another domino 2.5 times bigger than itself. And so it's something mad. By the time you get to the 6th or 7th domino, it can knock over a door.
Yeah. So it's increasing the size of the domino each time.
Exactly.
And eventually it can knock over the Eiffel Tower.
It can knock over the Empire State Building. Yeah. It's 15 times the Empire State Building, something crazy like that. And actually, I've always I love that metaphor, and we use it all the time in the positive context. And when you were talking about, how scaling starts with the leader, that they're the first domino, and until they fall over, nothing else will happen, and it happens exponentially. But when you're talking here about, to do nothing is also a risk, because that negative energy works the same way, where one domino, let's say the leader's in a bad mood, right? Employee then goes home, bad mood with the missus, and then knocks over again, bad mood with the kid. Next thing, bad mood with the whole neighborhood. Next thing you know, society is just miserable. So, it's that 1% better or 1% worse thing. Everything we do, I do believe, is exponential. And it's either exponentially good or it's exponentially bad, but it just happens so slowly you don't realize.
Absolutely. And it starts with the choices that you make today. And those collective behaviors are either for the good or not for the good. It's if we get into that in terms of the collective potential of teams, the latest Gallup survey suggests that less than 20% of people are actually engaged in the work that they do. Less than 20%. And to understand growing is trying to do more with more, scaling is doing more with leverage. And the third principle within the ScaleX Accelerated ScaleX framework is people. And when you understand that actually your people have so much potential, are they, you know, for the leaders listening to this today, can they honestly say that they are leading teams that are working that have people within those teams that are working to 100% of the potential? There's no way they are. Now, if you can develop yourself to the point where actually you're in service of others and seeking to support them and maximizing their potential, now you've got leverage.
Yeah.
Now you can start to really do great things. And you see that in action up in Seeding Matters.
Yeah, man.
Go to their morning meeting. You know, you have the machine shop lady who's standing up in the morning giving a presentation. Like my mother, essentially.
Yeah.
Standing up.
To 60 people.
To 60 people. And she's doing it very naturally.
Yeah.
You know, that's the power of unlocking a person's potential.
Yeah.
So this is a self-examination of really the ego. You know, do I want to hold on to what I have because I care deeply about what people think of me and I don't want to risk that should I venture into something that I might not be successful in? But ultimately, what I'm encouraging people to do is really examine themselves to the point that create a vision for the future. Lean into that vision. Unlock the power that exists within you as a leader, and you will see that domino effect, that exponential growth, not only for yourself, but for your team, the organization. And as we mentioned earlier, everyone benefits. Community, society, economy.
Class. We could go 2 hours. I'm gonna pivot here into a couple more personal things, kind of close some loops, and then land the plane. So, you mentioned earlier you love the scorecard, right? And the scorecard, it's not about the numbers, but actually the scorecard is just the thing that shows the leaderboard, for lack of a better term. I don't know if that was a Traction reference or if you use Traction or anything like that, but I'm really curious. And this might not be like a formalized, set in stone, written down somewhere process, but if I was to ask you what's on your personal scorecard, what would some of the things be that would be on that? You know, in the world of business, there's a lot of hard metrics, you know, hard numbers. Sometimes in our personal lives, things that are deeply important to us, it can be hard to quantify. But is there anything that would loosely fall into your personal scorecard, things that you keep a track of, things that are important to you, things that you know, if this is at a certain level, I know other things in my life will go well? Give us a wee bit of insight into that.
Yeah, so, you know, I have a personal vision as well as a professional vision. And I actually wrote an article back in 2022. And it was 10 effing ways to make this year brilliant. It was all F's. So, you know, I look at...
Very good.
I look at the articles on Medium if you want to have a go and have a look. But it starts with fitness. So I believe my health and well-being is my number one priority. People say, well, is it not family? I say, well, no, it's my health and well-being, because whenever I'm healthy and well, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then I'm available for the second F, which is my family.
It's the domino.
It's the domino.
It's the first domino.
Absolutely. It's back to that cliche, you know, put your own oxygen mask on before you try to help others.
You know, it's really interesting. Very, very quick. This was the first year where I have a list of 10 priorities in my life. And it's the first year that I actually put health to be the first thing. Because it was always, you know, family, and it was always faith, and I actually made that shift because I realized that if that bit is cracked, everything else becomes easier.
Absolutely.
Just wanted to
absolutely
throw it out there.
And then I would challenge you to say, if I go to your calendar now, would I see scheduled time in your calendar for activities that actually enhance your health and well-being? Would I see it there?
The answer is yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm the same.
Yeah.
But for many people will say, well, it's my health. And they go, okay, give me a look at your calendar.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I schedule in in terms of and it's color coded in my calendar. So
What color is it?
yellow.
Mine's green.
So yeah,
I knew I met a fellow nerd.
there we go. So
Tell me about what are some of those things? If I pull up your calendar, what are some of the things in yellow for the next month or two?
well, look, I'm a huge believer in coaches and mentors. So I've practiced Taekwondo for 25 years. I stopped practicing at a high level prior to COVID. It was because of COVID, but I still schedule in. So I had a Taekwondo coach. I now have a personal trainer.
Nice.
And that personal trainer uploads a program. It's 4 times a week into True Coach. I built my own gym, so I'm in the gym 4 times a week.
Good man.
I'm training at the moment for a charity cycle from Cambodia to Vietnam. That's in October, so I'm back out on the bike again. So I'm out on the bike twice a week. I walk most days. I have a very active and young German Shepherd. So I take the time, myself and my wife will go for a walk in the mornings.
Brilliant.
And so there are things now I don't even have to think about as a goal to walk 4 times a week. It's just habitual.
Yeah.
But what's programmed in there are those coaching sessions, the cycles. So fitness is very, very important to me. I do some form of training every day. It starts with the Wim Hof breathing. As soon as I waken up, I do 10, 15, 20 minutes of the Wim Hof breathing. I'll go into a stretching routine.
Nice.
And, so it's just drink my water, down, have my coffee, journal. So there are things that are just habitual. They're just part of who I am now. And so that's the fitness side of things. Then that enables me to be available for my family. It's the second F. And what I want, to cultivate a great relationship with my wife, Colleen. Spend time with Colleen. What does that look like? Date nights. I need to get back. Need to do more of those. But yeah, we schedule in date nights. With my family, it's scheduling in time with the three kids. So Owen absolutely loves his football. Was playing for Swifts last year. Instead of training on a Saturday, I started to do my long bike rides on a Sunday, so that Saturday was spent with Owen, taking him to the matches. So he's monosyllabic, says very little, but if you're traveling up to Belfast for a game with Glentoran, it's 50 miles up, it's 50 miles back. You're going to get some little insight from him. He's going to share something that you just got to be patient, and he'll disclose whether it's about a girl or about school or a teacher or whatever. So you've got to be patient, and I've done that for the last number of years. I could count in one hand the number of matches that I've missed.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of time with him. What's the slide rule for me in terms of being a successful parent? It's that my kids will come to me for anything. So nothing's off the table. When they were growing up, we would discuss absolutely everything. Yeah. Sex, drugs, rock and roll, everything in between. Have it, because I grew up in a very different environment. You had to work a lot of this stuff out for yourself. For us, anything's open. So Owen loves his football and Love Island. So as Colin said, I suffered Love Island for the last 6 weeks. It was him and I, Owen and I, daddy time to go. And anytime I share this with everyone, oh yeah, you suffered Love Island. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So
that's the scorecard. How many episodes of Love Island did you watch that week?
well, it got to the stage where I was going, I just want to go to bed. He'd come up and go, Daddy, you coming down and watch Love Island? Colin would kind of roll her eyes at me and wink, and kind of there I was on the way down. So yeah,
that's a power habit, though, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know what? There was some great insight because, and I did it with the girls because you said it. It gives you. If I was growing up, that would have been poo-pooed. It wouldn't have been, you wouldn't have been allowed to watch it. Now he's watching. I'm saying, who's treating the girls right there, Owen?
Nice.
What do you think of him? What do you think of that girl? Is she conducting herself in the way that you would like to see from your girlfriend?
That's hilarious image, man. You guys sitting on clipboards, analysing each of the people on the show. Big glasses on.
Absolutely. But you get, it's brilliant. I've had an insight to him, the people that I thought, what, that's not the way you should treat people.
Yeah.
He's thinking the same way. So
nice.
And that's only revealed itself through watching Love Island. Otherwise, you wouldn't get that opportunity.
It's great.
Okay, we're going to sit down now and chat about girls. So what sort of girls do you like?
Yeah.
You just, from the little snippets that he'll reveal, watching something like that, you know, you get an insight to him, his values, how he's likely to treat people, what values he admires in people. And it's the same with the girls, the two girls. I spent a lot of time. I spent July in Donegal. Spent a lot of time with my eldest daughter Anya, who's at university now, and I really valued the time with some brilliant conversations.
Class.
You know, conversations that I never had with my parents.
Yeah.
So
I had a mentor in here the other day, and he was talking about a situation where he went into a team and was tasked with basically transforming it professionally. And he went to his father, who was a labourer, but a very smart, very a bookworm sort of fella. And he was saying to his dad, you know, I don't know what approach to take. Should I take a hard line, bossy approach? Should I take a soft approach? And his dad turned around to him and said, son, do you know how they train dolphins? And the guy was like, you know what, with fish and rewarding them for when they do something. He said, no, the very first thing they do, do you know what it is? The guy said, no. He says, the very first thing they do is they get in the water with them and swim along beside them to show that they're on the same team.
yeah, I love that.
And you watching Love Island, or you go to Donegal, or you doing this, you doing that, you're getting in the water with your kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's a beautiful thing.
And taking that analogy, what I would say, once you've swam with them, in order to get them to jump, you hold the fish out, but you've got to find their fish. What is it that inspires them? What is it that really drives your kids? What are they passionate about? What is their fish? And support them and help them continue to jump higher and higher. Not your fish, their fish. Because often, again, we've grown up in a society where, you know, we perceive that somebody must follow, you know, the role of medicine, lawyer, engineer, we'll stick accountancy in there or whatever, but be educated.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you were in any of those jobs, those were considered respectable professions. My kids are growing up now and their admiration is for YouTubers.
Yeah.
When you break down all the barriers and go, actually, and they're quite academic, but I've always said, you don't have to go to university if actually it's not enabling what you dream about doing. And what I have always said to them is, ultimately, in this life, Owen had said to me, Daddy, isn't being a footballer the best job in the world? I said, well, it's only the best job in the world if you love football. Yeah. But the best job in the world is the job that you would do even if you weren't paid to do it.
Yeah.
That's that, you know, ultimately you want to cultivate that in them, understand what their fish is, what is their dream, and appreciate that you don't own your kids. I see it so often, especially in the football field, where you have parents trying to live their field sporting careers through their kids because they see their kids as an extension of their ego. And what we're trying to do the whole time is ultimately unlock their potential towards their vision, but ensuring that whatever they do in the world, that they're actually positively contributing to the world. And not kind of tolerate the sitting around or knocking others or whatever. Ultimately, whatever they do should be enable them to serve others in some way.
Yeah. Brilliant. Brendan, I can't think of a better place to end, so I'm actually just going to end it right there. Really, really enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed listening to this, highly recommend going and checking out Simple Scaling. There'll be a link to it wherever you're listening or watching, whether it's Spotify or YouTube or any of the other places. Also be a link to Brendan's website if you are a leader and your heart was beating in your chest when he was talking to you earlier. Highly recommend going and checking out the program. I know a lot of people who've been through it and it just sounds absolutely phenomenal. And other than that, Brendan, just want to thank you. This has been super insightful. We've been all around the world and back again, it feels like. I love that idea of simple not being the same as easy. You know, I'm deep in the newborn phase at the minute, and in some ways, having a newborn is incredibly simple. You feed them, you sleep them, you change them, but it's not easy. And I think I'm really inspired by you leaning into the hard parts of life, you leaning into the hard parts of dismantling the ego and going first and leading with that humility. and doing such great work for Northern Ireland and for so many people around the UK as well. So Brennan, thank you for your time, and really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. I've really, really enjoyed this. The last hour is absolutely flown, and I wish you every success with what you're doing. It's a wonderful podcast. I've got into it recently, and I love your passion and your championing of people in Northern Ireland. So continue to do the good work, my friend.
Gentleman, Roscoe, appreciate it. Have a good time. See you again next time. Cheers. Bye-bye. Awesome stuff. Look, hope you enjoyed it. Hope the hype at the start of the episode was warranted. We definitely think that it was. Couple of quick things. Again, this book here, if you run a business of any size at any stage, this will become the gospel for you. It is really, really interesting. There are 10 principles for scaling. They can apply to a podcast business. They can apply to a family business. They can apply to just about any business on the planet.